Cool. Hello. Welcome. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. So my name's James Brown, Head of Digital Manufacturing at Proptax. So I'll be the officiator or I guess admin for today's session, as well as doing some of the presentation. If you have any questions throughout today's webinar, please post them in the chat. There should be some way you can ask those to our technical team, which is awesome. If you have any issues or with the sound or anything like that as well, please post that into the chat as well. And yeah, we will jump straight in. Cool. So this is actually our 6th webinar, I believe, in a series of 7 that we're running in a countdown for Digital Construction Week. So today's session is going to be myself, James Brown, Callum Ray, and Sofian from our team. So there's actually 3 of us running today's session, which should be quite a fun one, I think. And this session is on on-site microfactories for AEC. Cool. Nice. So before we deep dive into today's webinar, just to give a bit of background, for those of you who don't know who we are, if you haven't tuned into any of the webinars already. So Proptax is a company based in Northern Europe. We specialize in construction, infrastructure, aerospace, and automotive manufacturing. Our prime focus is DELMIA digital manufacturing, so the stuff you'll see throughout the session today, where we're a licensed provider, trainer, and expert consultant. But we also work in other fields as well, such as robotics, tooling design, fixturing. I always like to mention that because it means we actually have first-on, hands-on experience doing a lot of the stuff we're showing too. So we're not just software people, which is good. Cool. And as I said, so this is the 6th in a series of webinars. So today we're covering on-site prefab microfactories. We have another webinar coming up next week as well on on-site prefab for optioneering. So where you'll see some of the follow-on from today's session, should be really interesting. If you're gutted you've missed any of the previous sessions as well, don't worry, we have loads of recordings ready. So if you want to register for them, you can still see them too, which is good. And for those of you who, to kind of give a brief introduction to 3D Experience, if you've never heard of 3D Experience and you're wondering what is this, what they're talking about during the session, so just briefly. So 3D Experience for me is all about bringing data together into a single area, so a single platform. So this could be 3D, 2D, it could be changes, issues, project management, tasks, marketing, sales, whatever that data is, it's all about bringing that into one platform, so it's in one single place. And the second big thing is about bringing people together, so from across the business, so it's not just engineers doing hardcore technical stuff. This is also project managers, so they can easily view what the engineers are using. It's for salespeople, it's for marketing, it's kind of for everyone within the business. And then the whole point of this is we have a whole suite of tools within 3D Experience to give the people the ability to use that data for something helpful, useful. So today we're going to really focus on DELMIA, which is obviously our key focus, but yeah, should be good. And yeah, to kind of dive in to the juicy stuff. So I'm actually going to start with, it's just a little recap from something from our very first webinar, which again, encourage you to go back and watch, which is configured product-driven construction. So if you aren't familiar with this and what I'm talking about, so this is starting off with a product library. So we have a load of construction products. This could be MEP walls, it could be traditional dry lining that we'll be using today. We have those pre-set up in a system where we know what those products look like. So we've identified multiple site opportunities to deploy this product to, and we've then configured the product to that site. So we've done all the good stuff, which I won't delve into now to take up time, but of on-site simulations, off-site factory stuff. Again, encourage you to watch those webinars if you haven't already. And what we're going to look at today is really focusing on on-site deployment. So if I jump into that one. So traditionally, to kind of give like an intro to what is a microfactory, like what we talk about. So to understand why you need a microfactory, we really just need to briefly look at a stick build process. So for me, this is lots of raw material movement. This is lots of people movement. It's lots of wasted movements on site. So if we start off at the beginning, so you have your raw material into your site, and you probably need some people to move it off the truck or whatever it is you're moving it with. We then need to move that material up to the floor where it's going to be used and utilized. And then after that, there's probably going to be some waste material which has to be removed from the site as well. So this, for me, is a typical view of what a lot of construction people see, and hopefully it's nothing new to people on the call. The thing that often gets missed, which we're really trying to capture with DELMIA, is there's also people on that floor. There's tools, there's equipment, there's processes, there's detailed steps that happen on that floor to make these things happen. And actually now, if you think about the people, there's also resource movement. There's people moving, there's drills moving, there's scissor lifts moving, there's articulated booms. There's all this equipment has to move to where it needs to be used on the floor. And then when you go up a floor in a building or to a different location, all of those same resources, products, equipment, all of that setup has to move constantly within the site. And this can take quite a long time to do that. There's obviously a time impact of moving equipment. The other side impact is when people move all the time, moving all of their setup, are they going to have the most efficient process and setup every single time? Probably not. So there's some room for improvement there, which thankfully this webinar we're going to dive into, which is microfactories. So again, just to give an overview of that, so the gist is now we're taking our raw material. This is going to come to a microfactory. This could be on site, could be near site, it could be actually within the building you're doing as well. We're going to basically move those processes from the building, the floor that you were doing it, majority of them back to this microsite. So this now means we have less material moving up to site because we're moving only a completed product. We don't have any waste coming out from the site, or if we do have waste, it's very, very minimal. The waste we have in the microfactory can be organized, can be controlled, so it's much easier to recycle basically from the microfactory. We still have resource movement to the floor as well because we still need people to install this thing, but the big thing here is there's less people, there's probably less equipment as well, and this process should be much faster actually in the field. So we're really leaning out the site, removing stuff from there. And same for when they move up as well. So that's kind of the context. Hopefully it's not too fast for people. What we're going to dive into in this session with Callum and Sofian, which would be great, is we've set a challenge. So if you've watched the previous webinar, we actually installed a traditional dryline stick-built architectural wall in these buildings. So we've identified, actually following those principles we just looked at, there's some opportunity there to improve it. So we're going to re-look at the embalming process. We're going to also re-look at the plant layout and how that could work. Sofian's going to introduce how that looks for the microsite and all the good stuff around there. And then Callum's going to show some awesome stuff on rate outputs and ergonomic improvements from using a microsite too. Cool. If my slide will go to the next one, sorry. Yes, sorry, I missed my animation. And you can see on the bottom right picture, so I've just illustrated here the thing we've identified was raw material going in, the waste going out, and then equally that same people movement there as well. So lots of resource movement, so lots of waste on the site. Cool. So what's the first thing we want to do? So the very, very first thing we'll take is going to be reassessing the processes for the site. So we basically are going to do an embalm process. And I think if I hand over to Sofian, he's going to join us now and run us through this. So yeah, I'd like to welcome Sofian.
Thank you very much, James. Yeah, as you said, we can use the exact same embalm, and what we are doing now, we are just adapting our process to suit the microfactory. We've grouped the processes such as, processes happening at height can happen at the same station because we are utilizing a platform now. And we've got also processes happening at parallel processes at the front and the rear of the wall happening at the same station in parallel. We're not going to dive into this too deeply because we've seen it over and over and over. What really I want to expand on today is material flow and how can we be lean in a microfactory, which is most of the time a very, very small space. So our microfactory is going to be located on site and is a mere 10 by 20 meters. What's very important here in such a tight space is lay down areas. Our now and our next. Visual controls are very important. Orientation of parts and the pack factor. So every single component needs to be located somewhere, and it needs to go there every single time we are replenishing. Sorry, we have to have a clear laydown area for the now. Now is what we are consuming now. We have to have a clear location for the next, which should be obviously located conveniently to replenish the now stock when that runs out. The visual controls can be as simple as lean, green, red cards, or it can be simply an empty box. So when the box is empty, we know that is the third box in circulation. We need to replenish the next because it has been consumed by the now, if you see what I mean. Parts orientation is a very important one. What we want to do, or what we want to avoid, is double handling. Lots of the times you will receive your parts on pallets from the supplier. You'll need to take them off those pallets and assemble to be able to assemble them. That is double handling. That is double handling for you and for the supplier most of the times. Think of space saving. If you've got stuff laying on the floor, chances are you are double handling. There's one thing called circular packaging. It's a very good solution to have. If you have well-designed stillages in circulation between your sites and your supplier, it is a very effective method. I mean, we can ensure, first of all, zero packaging waste. We can minimize damage to the product. It can save you both and your supplier lots of money. Sometimes all it takes is a call to the supplier and, share this idea as stillage. Can we both use this? Can we have a set of stillages here on site at the factory, another set yours, and then we keep circulating these. Then our pack factor is how many parts should we have on our now stock, on our next. This is dedicated by our production rate, by the delivery schedules, and by sometimes just the space. It's a tiny space, and we cannot have lots of stock in there. And obviously, we think about minimizing our operational cost as a whole. So now I'm going to do a quick exercise on the next slide. I'm just going to go and try and mark up this factory that has been designed, and I'm using a dashboard here. You'll see how easy it is. I'm just going to go around and see. I'm creating a new document called a markup, and what this gives us is a document very similar to a PowerPoint that can be shared with everyone. Very easy to understand. Great. So I'm looking there. I've got my straps there. They are nice and neat. They are on top of my workstation there. But again, we are double handling because we took them out of the box and then we put them there. That takes time. Next thing I'm looking at it, I'm looking at the insulation boards there. I see I've got enough for building one wall for one cycle, but I don't see the next. So I don't know where is the next. I can ask that question. Okay, and I'm looking, at the walkways. I'm looking at the layout as a whole, and I'm navigating my way through as I'm doing this in a very, very easy way. This is just run on a web browser, by the way. Same thing with our studs there. They are stored there. Yeah, stored nicely. Can't be damaged, but I don't see the next. Very, very important to have a dedicated area for all of your stock. Great. I just created a slide, I updated it, create a new slide, and yeah, again, that's a good visual control because I know that box is empty and another one needs to come there soon. I'm liking that KPI board there, what's happening in this station. That is too busy in there. Do we need all of that? It looks like we've got about a month worth of fastener supply there. Again, operational cost, space. Do we need all of that there? If I look around those boards there, the way they are stored, I don't really like that. They are prone to damage. They probably, it's not going to be easy for the operator to go and fit them if he's standing right there. I'm happy with the storage up there for the straps. Then the next of the boards is just laying on the floor there. That can fall, can be damaged. I'm going to write a note there. And as I'm going, I'm creating new slides, walking my way through. Go into the next station. Happy with that. And what I'm seeing is boards that are stored upright. Looks very counterintuitive. People are going to be asking, can we really do that? But just think about how efficient that would be to fit a plasterboard, for example. So again, I can just navigate, anyone can navigate through these slides. It just becomes like a PowerPoint. Very easy, very visual, and then we can take actions from there. So yeah, again, very important, lay down areas, visual controls, orientation of parts, and then the pack factor, which is dictated by the production rate. And I'm going to leave you with my friend Callum, who's going to talk us through the rest of it.
No, thank you very much, Sofian. So yeah, so we've determined that material flow. What we now have is determining our factory flow, and just a preamble to that is actually our layout. So we can use tools within DELMIA to rapidly plan our layout, the internal to the microfactory. Again, as you've heard us talk previously, hopefully, is we can use our kinematic and our parametric smart resources to rapidly change sizes, to quickly adapt to visuals, whether the table's too short, whether we need a longer one, whether our catwalk or elevated platform is just slightly too low. The tools we have can allow us to quickly adapt that. Once we have our layout and we're happy, we can use this in our factory flow to determine our output. So how long each station is going to take, our movement times, how much material we can store into our buffers, and at the end, how long it takes to output these prefabricated walls. And from this output and from this simulation, we can get a lot of evaluation there. So we can look at our on-time delivery. So we've been talking a lot about lean, and it wouldn't be a microfactory and it wouldn't be a lean factory if we had a wasteful storage area right at the end. This factory has taken up probably the area that we'd normally store our raw materials for traditional, so we wouldn't be doing our lean any justice if we then had to add on an additional buffer at the end. We can then analyze our critical path operations within the factory, whether we have an operation which takes longer or takes a certain piece of equipment that we can only fit one into our factory of. We can also put this data and look at its impact on our main build sequence with stuff as our equipment failure, crew shifts, and equipment and work times. You know, if we went the route of an off-site factory, we'd have the benefit of having access to more resources, more equipment, and potentially multiple lines. We're looking at a microfactory here, which is predominantly a single line or a single station solution. And as such, we don't have multiples of each equipment. So we need to make sure that we take into fact that equipment does fail and people do get ill and people do need breaks. And that's all captured within the power of DELMIA and our factory flow, and it's important that we simulate that, otherwise we wouldn't have a true life simulation and we'd probably have closer to an animation. And then once we've got our factory flow, it's not a factory without people. So again, we need to analyze the worker safety. We're again determining the ergonomic worker zones, so whether we're going to be having cells or we're going to be having stations, the parts are within reach of each other, the parts are in an ergonomic position, to actually be utilized, and they're not, you know, on a shelf at 8 feet high that you can't quite reach. Again, we're looking into the reach and access. And that will drive back to our factory planning and whether we need to increase the height of some of our gantries, or we need to change the table height because it's not ergonomic enough, or if we need to bring in additional equipment from an external. We can also do a postural analysis again here, and that allows us to do a comparison direct to the traditional.
Just chip in here as well. So I think this is awesome stuff as well, Callum, because I think the big thing with construction is, unfortunately, with the sector, there is a lot of injury still and a lot of like bad things for people, basically. So it's really important. Even with a microfactory, we take all this stuff into account. For me, we've seen live from the sector, like actual real sources. We can't name them for obvious reasons. This has been a huge push for us, is how do we make stuff in the field safer? And one of the big ways we can do that is by pushing it into microfactories like this, because it creates all of the awesome lean opportunities that Sofian's ran through. And then it means we can actually make this as safe as possible for the workers in the microfactory as well, as Callum's shown here. Sorry, Callum.
No, that's no problem at all. I think you've pretty much captured all I have in about 2 seconds. So. But yeah, you know, it's important that we do this worker safety. We've nearly had it in every webinar, but it's extremely important that you're not creating an environment in which workers cannot operate safely, in which they cannot work safely, because that inevitably will impact your build time, which is what DELMIA is going to be saving, you know, the cost saving and time saving. So, and I'm going to, yep. So, in conclusion, our microfactory in DELMIA, we've done a lot with it actually. It might not seem so, but we've used it to evaluate the capacity and to, if we can operate this on-site factory. We've used it to analyze the footprint and its internal layout. You know, we've captured that information. So one of the big things is once you go into the next site, if you're going to go down the on-site microfactory again, this is already captured. It's literally drop in and you can analyze it for that site and your logistics there. Solution we used conversations around optimize that assembly process, but we've also optimized that microfactory even more using DELMIA to make it as lean as possible. And you can quickly identify any wasted areas through the layout tools and through the factory flow tools as well. And again, that assessment of that productivity, those bottlenecks, if you have a critical path, if you have a piece of equipment which is going to consume all your time and every piece may go through there, and whether or not you actually do need to increase the size and go to maybe a multi-station or a multi-line solution there. And lastly, yeah, as we've just went on quite a bit about that impact worker safety and that improvement from the traditional installation sequence, which we talked about in our previous webinar. Hopefully from that you can see the benefit that DELMIA simulation can bring when you're adapting to a microfactory. And hopefully we will have lots of questions at the end. I'm going to hand back over to James now. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. No, that was great, Callum. And thank you, Callum and Sofin. I think that was an awesome webinar, and it's been a really fun one. We've enjoyed putting it together as well. I think one little last concluding point I'll put as well is we were talking about it this morning of how obvious a lot of this stuff can seem, to say, let's lean out the process, let's bring the tools closer to the people. Oh, that's a great idea to save space by doing stuff like this and this and this. But actually, it's really not obvious, and it's until you've done it and until you've seen it and you've tried stuff. So that's one of the massive things for this, is that know-how capture and giving the team the tools to be able to see this and communicate it. So I think we definitely felt that doing this has been a fun one, really fun one. Cool. And yeah, so yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed that. If you agree with me, that was an awesome session. So we do have another webinar coming up on the 16th of May at 11 AM. So I'd encourage you to join that, where we're actually going to simulate the product that's now been prefabbed in the microfactory installed on site. So we'll see how much we've actually simplified the installation process for the field and the ergonomic benefits there as well. So it should be a really good session. And then if you've loved seeing all this stuff throughout the couple of weeks we've been doing it, I would also encourage you to come find us at Digital Construction Week, which is next week, 17th and 18th of May. So we'll be there too, if anyone has any questions in person. It'll be fun. Cool. And then if you want to try this stuff out yourself as well, as part of with this webinar series, we're running a promotion where you can actually try all of this DELMIA stuff for just £500 for 3 months. There's no commitment afterwards. You don't get a rolling sign up or anything like that. So you'd get access to all the tools that we've shown in this webinar and many, many more, basically, to try it out, test it, see if it works for your business as well. And just to reiterate again, if you do that, the benefit is you'd have us on hand to obviously train you up if you want that training. Hopefully, if you love it, which I'm sure most of our customers do once they get their hands on it, to buy that as well, you can actually purchase that from us at Bobtex as well. Cool. And yeah, and that pretty much concludes this webinar. So I'd encourage, if anyone does have any questions, I'll mute that video. I don't think I can mute it. There we go. Don't know if that plays during the webinar, so I'll mute that. So yeah, if anyone does have any questions, we've run slightly over, but I think we can maybe take a couple of quick questions. We've got a few in the chat. Let me just have a look. Yeah, so one of the first ones was someone asked, is this session being recorded? I forgot to mention that at the start, so thank you for asking. Yes, the session is being recorded, and you can watch that back later, or if you have any colleagues that have missed it that you think this would be useful for, obviously they can register for that too. And let's see it there. Just look. Any other questions? We had one here for how long do you estimate it would take for a company new to DELMIA to adapt their approach and change to a microfactory solution? It's a very good question. Does anyone want to take that one, or maybe?
I mean, I can certainly start it.
Sure.
It's there's a few sort of caveats to begin with. It's how quick of a learner your champion who's going to be running with DELMIA will take to sort of learn the software and adapt to that. That's your sort of preamble to it. I think once they are familiar and you've captured all the data you need to within the software, and you're not adding new to it. You can quickly form a microfactory solution within sort of, I'd say, detailed and have signed off within a week. I'm getting a nod there because I'm. But yeah, I would say a week's a solid time for somebody who's new to DELMIA to go from everything we've talked about, M-bomb process, through to that build up, having the resource allocation, having the resource positioning. I'd say that the factory flow stuff probably adds a little bit more time onto that as well. But once you're fluent in DELMIA, I think that's probably a good way to put it. Yeah, it gets quick. And again, I think to note is once you've done the first one, it gets quicker and quicker because you're capturing that knowledge and that expertise every single time. James, if you have anything to add to that, there's probably lots more. So.
Exactly. I think for me, like you nailed it at the end, is that know-how capture is really important. If this is the first time you're doing this layout, first time you're having to think about staging, part movement, like the communication boards, things like that, there'll also be a time cost to build those resources and get them in. Once you have them captured, again, encourage you to watch the first webinar on know-how capture, things like that. That's within your business, so this should be really quick, because we were actually talking about this morning when we Sofian, and you said it took you around, what was it, to mock up this microfactory?
Probably a day.
Yeah.
Probably another day for all of the jigs and the tooling. Yeah, I wanted to mention as well. I think there is a huge opportunity here. Whilst there is a big transition now from paper to screens in lots of businesses. And it's the best opportunity to deploy things like that, like work instructions that are played on a web browser and a screen that everyone can see and can understand easily. Things like 3D markup that we've just seen, things like your KPI board, instead of printing paper and communicating the old way. I think we are moving forward to web-based communication, really. So yeah, the opportunity is huge, to be honest.
So hopefully that answers that question. And then we have just one more question as well, which is, let me just read that. So do we think having a microfactory will improve the lean methods over doing it in the field? So maybe that one for Sofian, or I can comment on that too.
Yeah, it's very important. If we're working on the field, then just think about how are we moving materials. That's what we've touched upon at the beginning. But also we are building, I don't know, per floor, we're probably building 100 walls. Then imagine those pallets following that wall, those people moving from one location to the other. Was if we take all of that and do the exact same thing in a 20-meter long temporary building, then already we are lean. We have to be leaner than what we are on site to be working in that small space. And obviously, because you've got your products moving from one station to the other, as we were saying earlier, you've got your laydown areas, you've got your pack factors. As your product is moving and is not stationary, then it becomes easier to apply lean then.
Great, thank you, Sofian. And I think one little comment from me there as well is agree with everything Sofian said is so important for creating opportunities to lean basically versus traditional. In this session, we've shown a microfactory which is outside in a tent. We've also seen in the field people doing exactly that. But also you can do a microfactory on a floor of your building. Why not corner level 2 to be your lean process microfactory, or the basement, or a near site? There might be a helpful garage or something like that that you can rent out and use for your project. So it doesn't matter where this microfactory is, it's the principles of that giving people the opportunity to be lean and thought out, and yeah, so
100%.
cool. So I've not been as good a timekeeper as our usual host, Ricky Cartwright. So we've ran slightly over, so apologies for that. Hopefully you've all found this really interesting. And yeah, I think we'll, if there's no more questions, if there is any, please feel free to email us, and we can answer those questions separately from this session. And if you have enjoyed it, please do reach out. This has been a very quick intro to it, as we've covered a lot in the session, I think.
We're just scratching the surface.
Yeah, exactly. So please do reach out if you want to learn more. And yeah, thank you again for attending, and hopefully we'll see you at the next one. Cool. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.